Good evening, everyone, and welcome to NLL Live for Week 9. I'm your host, Mark Powers. Unfortunately, my usual co-host, Connor Wilson, is out sick this week. Get better soon, bud. Hope to have you back on. But that actually presents a great opportunity for us to bring on an old favorite of the show, a guy that we had back at the draft, my co-host for this week, the voice of the Philadelphia Wings, and the man helming NLL halftime, Dave Walls. How you doing tonight, Dave?
Doing all right. Thanks for having me. Sorry I'm not representing the facial hair like Connor is, but
That's a good thing.
It would take me a couple of years to kind of get to that, but thanks for having me. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, no, I'm looking forward to talking to you about the Wings and taking advantage of some of your expertise around the league. And our guest tonight, we actually have a great guest. We haven't had a goalie on the show before, and I'm excited to have this particular goalie. He is the backstopper of the Toronto Rock, a two-time Minto Cup winner, an up-and-coming superstar in the league. We got Nick Rose here tonight. Nick, how you doing, buddy?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me on. I'm excited to be here.
Now, Nick, it looks like you got a pretty interesting background behind us. Where are you coming to us from?
I'm actually at work right now. I work at our practice facility with the Rock in Oakville, Ontario, and it's called the Toronto Rock Athletic Center. And I figured our turf behind me is a nice backdrop. So.
Yeah. That's pretty interesting. They got you employed in a day job and a night job. So looks like can we say you're working overtime?
No, I wouldn't say I'm working overtime right now.
No time and a half?
Yeah, no.
Okay. All right, well, I don't know if you guys have seen the show before, but hopefully our viewers are getting a little more familiar with our format. We like to start the show each week with a little bit of an icebreaker so people can get to know our guest. We have some silly questions or some yes or no answers. So we'll get into that right now. You ready, Nick?
Yeah, absolutely.
Excellent. So we'll start one with a lacrosse question. Now, who's had the most impact on your lacrosse career?
Like as far as fundamentals go, or as just like
for example, a lot of guys will always say their dad or someone like that maybe got them into the game, or a coach, growing up, something like that. I even think one of our guys was talking about his mom and how she always took him to practice.
Yeah, I mean, obviously it kind of starts with the parents. My mom has always been there for my career and whatnot. Like you said, taking me to practices and just always showing up to games. So I'd have to say her for sure. My father passed away when I was young, so
I'm sorry to hear that.
No, that's all right. I play for him every time I step on the floor. So I'd say he's one of those guys too. And I definitely have to say my minor lacrosse coach, Bob Cleveley, as well, as far as goalie fundamentals. He was a former goalie. He's been around Orange Road Junior A Northman a lot, so I'd have to put him in there as well.
Sure. Now, lacrosse goalie inherently is an interesting position, and box goalie's got to be even more, different than the field game. Have you ever had a box goalie coach or somebody who really mentored you specifically at the position?
Yeah, I'd probably say who I just mentioned, Bob.
Oh, okay.
He was my coach in minor lacrosse, and he, being a former goalie, that's kind of what his forte was. So he helped me a lot with kind of the details of being a goalie, and he was our GM with the Orange Road Junior A Northman as well. So I've took a lot of goalie pointers from him, I'd have to say.
Nice. Now, normally I got offensive-oriented guys on here, and I'll ask them what their best or most memorable goal that they've scored is. But obviously, I can't ask you that. So, what's the best or most memorable save that you've had? Whether it's a game-saving save or one that was just so ridiculous that you can't help but remember it.
It's a tough question. Like in the NLL, I think I'd have to say. Against Buffalo Bandits, my first year with Toronto in the playoffs. It was 6-6. We were up by 7-6 late in the game, and John Tavares had a chance right on top of the crease, wide open, and I just got my arm out to kind of knock the ball away, and we end up winning that game. So I'd probably say that one is the most memorable right now.
Sure. I mean, stopping a living legend in a game that you guys won to make it to the Eastern Finals, where unfortunately you guys lost to Rochester, but that was a great game. I definitely remember that one.
Yeah.
Let's transition to some more life questions real quick. What's your favorite non-lacrosse sports team?
I'm a huge Pittsburgh sports fan, so I'd say Steelers, but I like the Penguins and Pirates. But I'm also a homer as well, so I like the Maple Leafs and Raptors and Blue Jays. So I'd say my main team is the Steelers, so I live and die by them.
And where did that Pittsburgh love affair come from? That's a little weird being a Canada guy. I'm sure there's a reasoning.
Actually, it's that's my dad. I always saw pictures of him with like Pirates sweaters and Steelers stuff on, and
Oh,
like
nice.
me and my mom just kind of took over of cheering for Pittsburgh. So yeah, that's where that comes from.
Oh, that's awesome, man. That's really special. So what's your favorite movie and what's your favorite TV show?
Movie, I gotta go Cool Runnings, especially with the Olympics right now. My dad was born in Jamaica, so uh, every time I watch that movie, it just gets me in a good mood, and that's my favorite movie right now. And for TV show,
Feel the rhythm.
yeah, absolutely. For TV show, I'd have to say Breaking Bad. It's probably my favorite all time. It's just too good, but I watch a lot of TV shows, so I got a lot of favorites, but I'll go with Breaking Bad.
Gotcha. Yeah, that seems to be a pretty popular one
Yeah.
among the lacrosse set. And last one for me before I turn it over to Dave, who I'm sure is chomping at the bit. If you could have lunch with any one person, whether it's famous, somebody from the past, who would it be?
I've seen the last few of these that everyone keeps going Muhammad Ali, which is a great choice. He's a legend.
Sure.
Who am I going to go with here? Maybe, I think I got to go Wayne Gretzky. Just a Canadian legend, probably the best hockey player ever. Seems real down-to-earth guy, so that's my pick.
All right, two or three from me real quick, Nick. Tomorrow, Canada, USA hockey in the Olympics for the gold medal. Score prediction. What do you got? Like I need to ask, but I got to put it out. What do you say?
I don't want to jinx them.
Semis, right? Semifinals,
Yeah.
right?
Semifinals, all right, but it
I'm-
might as
That's
well be
okay.
the gold medal game, right?
Yeah, that's right.
I'm going to go 4-2 Canada. It's going to be 3-2 late in the third, and they're going to get an empty netter to ice it.
All right, all right. I'm going to steal one of Mark's questions that he usually asks. Goaltenders don't normally get involved with fights very often. Has there been an instance in your career where you just couldn't get out of the way, or someone crashed into you and you just you end up dropping the gloves, or you ever been involved in any of those good old-fashioned 5-on-5 line brawls, or?
No, I've come close a couple times in junior A. Like we'd have some really tough battles with Six Nations, but when it gets down to the scrums and stuff, and kind of know a fight's coming, I'd usually get pulled and we put in our backup, and then our backup would end up fighting. So I got to miss out on all the fun stuff, but there's been a few close calls, but no, I haven't got too rough out there.
Gotcha. Last one for me. Just curious about life on the road a little bit. What's your favorite city, other than Toronto, of course, to play in when you get to travel? What city do you enjoy most?
We got a lot of great cities in this league. I got to throw Colorado out there. It's an incredible city. I've visited my buddy Jeremy Noble out there too at school. So it's a one of a kind city, great sports city as well. So I'll go Colorado.
I can't
Nice.
say I blame you there. That's a nice city.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hey, Dave, great questions, man. And normally I like to get a little selfish with this, but we got some good ones coming in from the lacrosse universe. Lacrosse All Stars, presumably our good buddy Connor Wilson checking in. He wants to know, Nick, what's your favorite NLL moment?
Favorite NLL moment? I've had a lot of good times in NLL. Playing in Boston was a great experience for 3 years, but if I got to pinpoint a moment, probably got to go back to that playoff win against Buffalo my first year. We kind of got hot down the stretch, and we beat a great Buffalo team to move on, and that's my one playoff win, so I got to go that right now.
Sure. Yeah, I think if I remember correctly, when you joined the Rock mid-season back in 2012, you won your first game and then went on a tear. I think you guys finished the season 5-1 or something like that. So not surprising that that's pretty memorable for you. And we got another good question that somebody's checking in with. We got Elijah, pardon me if I get this wrong, Casellas. She calls you, or I'm assuming it's a she, pardon me again, calls you the best goalie in the game, but they want to know who your favorite athlete is.
Favorite athlete? Oh, I got a lot. I'm going to go Usain Bolt, though. He's the fastest man in the world. He's got that Jamaican heritage as well. So, like, you don't get a better athlete than that, so I'll go Usain.
Nice. That's an interesting pick. That's good. Now, other than the obligatory Canadian move of adding an E onto the end of everything, do you have any nicknames other than Rosie?
Actually, I do. When I got traded to Toronto, I don't know where it started. Colin Doyle just gave me the nickname Big Papa. I think the song by Notorious B.I.G. came on, and he just started calling me it. So that's probably the only other one I have other than Rosie.
Okay, so if you were a baseball player and you were coming to bat, that's what they'd be playing for you, Big Papa?
Yeah, for sure.
Nice. What's been your favorite non-lacrosse job? Now, I got to admit, I'm not going to count your current offering there at the track as a suitable answer here. You got anything memorable?
That's tough. I don't know if I've done many other jobs in lacrosse. I've worked at a sports store, which isn't specifically lacrosse.
You and Chris Corbeil, that seems to be a good look. Yeah.
Yeah. I worked at a fish and chip place when I was real younger, but I don't even really remember that too much. Other than that, it's been all lacrosse, working here, sports store, string and sticks, that kind of stuff. So.
Okay. Nice. A couple more questions for you before we transition to some more of the lacrosse stuff. And actually, shout out to all the fans and people checking in right now. Please get your questions into us via the comments feed on YouTube. You can also get in touch with us at hashtag NLL Live. We got a bunch of people streaming in, so shout out to everybody tuning in. We'll get to your questions in just a second. Keep them up. If you could change one thing in the NLL, and obviously you have an interesting perspective here being a goalie, what would it be?
Oh.
You don't have to change anything.
Well, if being a goalie, I got to go with the dunk goals, especially we got burned a lot last year with those, and I just think that's the one play where goalies specifically are like, in any other sport, there's no position that's at such a disadvantage than there is on those kind of plays. But I mean, like they're exciting goals, and you got to be very athletic to kind of score them, but I think I'd have to eliminate those just because I got burned a lot last year with those. So. Sure,
that's a great answer. Interesting perspective. Nice. Yeah. Who's your toughest opponent? And you can tell us either the team or an individual player, a guy that's just had your number, who just can't, always seems to get the ball past you.
Well, it's pretty fresh in the memory. I'd have to go Rochester and specifically sure. Cody Jamieson. I played my whole life against him. I've had my ups and downs against him, but he's just always kind of found a way to put the ball behind me, and he's one of the best players in the world. So it's been good playing and growing up against him because you know what he's bringing to the table, and that Rochester team, they've won the championship for a reason the last 2 years. So once we get over that hump, I have to say them. They're the best right now in the game. So.
Nice. Yeah, I can see the two-time defending champs being a hurdle for sure. Last two before we transition to some of our viewers that are chomping at the bit and recap some of the games from last week. Do you have any specific pregame meal that you got to eat? And do you also have any? I know we talked about Big Papa, but is there anything specific that you like to hear before you hit the floor that either centers you or pumps you up?
Yeah, I'm a big music listener before the game. I'm in charge of our playlist, and
big responsibility.
Yeah, it is. Some of the older vets don't like the new age stuff that I put on there, but I'd have to say our one team song that is a must listen is "Shake It Out" by Florence and the Machine. Sure. It just kind of calms us down and gets us in the mood. It's probably a bit of a different song to choose here, but that's the one we always seem to have on. And for meal, I usually switch it up, either chicken, pasta, veggies, like most of the guys have said. That's usually the setup at the hotel or whatever on the road. But if I get to choose, I'll go either that or salmon, like a good fish with some veggies and stuff.
Okay, and golf clap to you guys for being seemingly the first NLL team that doesn't have some horrific pop song as their rallying cry. So you guys are the rare Canucks that are embracing some quality music. Let's touch in on with our fans real quick, and let's hear what they're saying before Dave and I recap the games for last week. We got Mike McMillan checking in. It seems like he's got a question about your potent offensive game. I think I was doing my research and I saw you got 5 or 6 assists so far in the season. Is that something you're conscious about?
Yeah, I've always tried to make a point to throw the ball pretty well, and it's a weapon out there if you're able to kind of hit your D guys in transition, and if they're able to bury, that's a big opportunity to swing the game in your favor. So that's definitely something I focus on and make sure I got a good throwing stick. So.
Nice, yeah. That's really an interesting perspective. I know that's a big focus for the outdoor game, but good to see that you're capitalizing on the transition. This next one might be a little loaded. I feel like this guy has got an inside perspective here. Damon Edwards is checking in. D Edwards 88. I can see you giggling already. He wants to know, who is your roommate for home and away games? Got to admit, kind of surprised that you have a roommate for home games. And he wants to know, what are his best traits?
Classic. Well, obviously he's my roommate. He knew that. But his best traits, where do I start? He's a
beaut, as you guys would like to say, right?
Exactly. I mean, physical traits. The guy's a specimen. I think Patty Campbell calls him the stallion every time he walks in here at the track. So I got to go. His body is just a stud.
You're gonna get chirped all week for that, but I appreciate your honesty. That was good. That was good. We bring out the best in the people. Nice. Well, let's transition to some of the results from last week. I know you touched on it earlier, having a tough outing against Rochester, and I'm sure you guys are looking to rebound. So maybe we'll save that one for the last one we talk about. Let's talk about the Friday night game. Dave, did you get a chance to catch Vancouver really rebounding and trouncing the Colorado Mammoth?
You know what, I did, and it was very surprising. When a team is struggling the way Vancouver is, you always wonder when they're going to break out and they're going to have that game, and they did so pretty convincingly over Colorado. I mean, if it isn't for the fact that Westerveld ends up getting like 4 or 5 goals there, I mean, that score is even worse than 19-9. I mean, it was all Vancouver, but then it was surprising to see how they came off of that and then went into Saturday night and had the result they did then. Don't want to jump ahead.
No.
Yeah, but I mean, it was just amazing to have that kind of weekend where you go from putting 19 in the net, then getting 20 put on you the next night. It was like my producer in Philly, John Barger, said he was like Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. We didn't know which team was going to show up.
Yeah, no, that's right, and it is certainly interesting to see the extremes of them scoring so many goals and then letting up so many goals. Going into last week, I was saying that particularly the Friday night contest, that would be an opportunity for Vancouver to really put their foot in the ground and make a stand. And I thought that may have been a harbinger or a sign of things to come. But like you alluded to, they came out the next night and totally laid an egg against an obviously really fired up and ready to go Calgary team. What are your thoughts about the prospect for both of those teams moving forward? They kind of have had an interesting run so far in the league this season.
Yeah. I mean, I like Vancouver's got all the right pieces, and you've got Tyler Digby, who's on a Rookie of the Year type season. He's already got 35 points midway through the season here, and he's really been a huge boost to that offense. The problem is, aside from him and Reese Dutch, there hasn't been many other people who have consistently been putting the ball into the net. And combine that with the fact that you've had a couple games where their defense has really collapsed. They looked honestly pretty bad against Philadelphia, and I don't think that was even Philadelphia doing a lot of things right. I think Vancouver made things pretty easy for Philadelphia that night. So I think they've got all the pieces to put it together. They just haven't been able to do so yet. The good thing is, with them splitting this past weekend, they're still, while they're in the cellar in the West, they're still not far out of the playoff berth. They're only, I think, a game back at Colorado, and so by winning that game against Colorado, at least keeps things close here going into the second half.
Sure. Now, early prediction out of you before I ask Rosie about what his thoughts are on these two teams. Who do you like getting that? Presumably, let's say that Edmonton's going to get one of the spots, and just for the sake of argument, we'll say that Colorado, right now, who seems to be in second, they'll say that they get the second spot. Who do you think out of Vancouver and Calgary has the best shot at that third spot in the West?
Out of Vancouver and Colorado, I probably lean towards Colorado.
Calgary.
Or Calgary. I'm sorry. I don't see Vancouver making it. They, at this point through the season, normally by now I can at least pinpoint a team, put a finger on, and go, they can do this well. This is where in a spot where they need to fix this and this. I can't put my finger yet on any one person in Vancouver and say this is the kind of season they're having yet. So sitting here midway through the season, it would be crazy of me to sit here and go, I think Vancouver is a good shot, because they haven't proven to me week to week that they have what it takes to get that kind of run going to not only do well in the playoffs, but to even make it into the playoffs. The fortunate thing, again, is they've kept it close enough record-wise to third place where they're not out of it and they've still got plenty of time to figure it out.
No, agreed. I think if you put a gun to my head and made me choose today, I would say Calgary. I like their prospects more. Their offense is starting to gel and really fire on all cylinders, like we saw last season when they were the leading scoring team in the league. Nick, I know that they play on the opposite side of the world from you, but any opinions on the doings in the seemingly the cellar of the Western Conference?
Like in this league, it's so easy to go from week to week being the hero and then the zero. So it's hard to predict what's going to happen every weekend in the NLL. I think with Colorado, it depends a lot on how quick Adam Jones can get back. He's a complete game changer out there, and he's a guy that Colorado will definitely need down the stretch to make a run. I don't want to count out Vancouver either. They're a great veteran team, and even though they've had their struggles this season, they're a team that can turn around. Like with a goalie like Tyler Richards as well, if he gets hot, there might not be stopping them. So gun to head, I'm going to say Colorado just because they got a bit better record right now and have a bit better opportunity, but it's so hard to predict in this league.
Now, talking about Vancouver, you've played in the WLA, I think, the past couple summers. What are your thoughts on the NLL returning to Vancouver and having a presence in BC? Is that something that's important to you as a Canadian? And why don't you talk about that for a sec?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I've been out in BC for the last 4 summers. It's a great lacrosse province, and I'm happy to see NLL lacrosse back in BC. Langley Event Center is a great rink too, so I played there down the stretch this year after the trade deadline. So I think it's a great venue. I just the BC fans got to start coming out. They wanted this team back for a long time. They got to kind of show that they want it there and want to keep it there. So I think it's a great opportunity, and I think the people will start to come.
Sure, and actually, I should give you the justice that you do here. Back in 2012, you were voted first-team All-Star in the WLA. You won the Leo Nicholson Trophy as the most outstanding goalie, and you were the most valuable player. So clearly, you're ripping things up out there, and I'm sure you're looking forward to big things this summer. So I just want to give everybody the appropriate due and let people know how much of a presence you are out there. Let's transition back to some of the other games and talk about some of what went on Saturday. Dave, you had a front row seat to see my team, the team that I'm really liking this season, the Buffalo Bandits, come into Philly, give them a little payback from that. Up in Buffalo, you didn't have a first row seat, but I'm sure you were paying attention to what was happening when Buffalo gave a little payback to Philly from their first loss in the first game of the season.
Yeah, and Buffalo took it to him. I mean, they came in with the perfect game plan. They put the double team on Jordan Hall. He had no room to breathe. He only really got his only quality shot late in the fourth, and that was a goal that was waved off on review.
Yeah.
And they never let Philadelphia get comfortable out there. And give all the credit in the world to Anthony Cosmo. I mean, he's having a resurgence this year. I mean,
Yeah.
coming in maybe the end of last season, he looked tired. He looked like that the years were starting to catch up to him. And whatever Troy Cordingley and everybody up there is doing in Buffalo to work with him, it's been working because he's had a complete resurgence, a complete 180. He does not look like the same goaltender from last year. He looks like the goalie from years ago. And also give credit to John Tavares coming back. I mean, the 45-year-old
wonder.
And I mean, he looks like something happened off season. They shaved 15 years off of him. I mean, he of course he doesn't move like he did when he was in the early 90s, but which one of us does? He's still out there getting it done. You give him a little bit of space, and he can still make teams pay. And it was a through and through win for Buffalo.
Yeah, and I'm glad you touched on those two players. I think Nick might actually have a pretty interesting perspective on this because if I remember correctly, when you joined the league, you got drafted by Boston, first, and famously Anthony Cosmo was the goalie there. Anything that he imparted to you, and what did you learn backing him up, and talk about that experience?
Yeah, I mean it was an incredible experience. We had a lot of good vets in Boston. Cosmo, Dan Dawson, Paulie Dawson. I was also with Mike Poulin as well in my first year in Boston.
Sure, for everybody that doesn't know, that's the Calgary starter.
Yeah, it was great just to kind of see, as far as lacrosse goes, see the way Cosmo and Poulin, both of them, compete and practice and kind of push each other to get better every week. And they're kind of the ultimate pros. They taught me a lot of how to kind of act off the floor as well and be a professional at all times, like you're representing your team as well as the city that you play in. So I think that's the most important thing I learned is just being a pro. But like Cosmo is one of the best goalies in the world right now. He might not have had a great year last year, but their team didn't have a great year. They kind of found their swagger, and Cosmo's back, and it's going to be tough to get by them if he's playing like that.
Yeah, I can only imagine. I'm sure what's already an intense rivalry between the Rock and the Bandits is only going to be more intense as the season progresses with two great goaltenders with you and Cosmo and Net. Let's shout out some of the fans real quick before we get back to the action. Viewers, we got The Guy 1545 checking in on YouTube. Derek Weber, we see you. Oh, my wife is checking in. Okay, she wants to know when the Lacrosse Network is going to be making a bobblehead of me. And actually, coincidentally, Jade Webb is checking in and wants to know when there's going to be Nick Rose bobblehead night. Any insight on that, Nick?
I'm not going to make a prediction on that. We've gone Colin Doyle and Garrett Billings the last 2 seasons, so if I was ever to get a bobblehead, I'd be very proud of it to be in that company. But I'm not too concerned about getting one anytime soon.
Right. Yeah. I mean, you said it all. Two stars of the game right there. That's certainly some rarefied air. And apologies go out to Elijah Casellas. I now see you on the YouTube check-in. You were clearly not a girl. My apologies. Didn't mean to get that wrong. We got East Coast Dies checking in. Always great to see Greg and the boys looking after it. They have a question for you. They want to know what offensive player do you fear the most? And I know you touched on Cody Jamieson, but anybody else that's really got your number?
It's tough. I mean, Jamieson, feels like I've always battled against him since I was basically novice. So I got to put him in there. He's one of those guys that we kind of alternate between kind of having each other's numbers. So, but he's had my number lately. So I'd still go with Cody Jamieson as that guy probably.
That's a safe pick. Scott Ludwig, we see you. Apologies for getting to this question so late. But he has a question for you, Nick. He says, Nick, what has been the biggest difference between playing with Toronto in the NLL and then playing with Coquitlam in the WLA over the summer? Is there any difference between the styles of play and playing for those two teams?
Yeah, I think summer ball is a bit like old school. That's the only real way I can describe it. It's real gritty. Sometimes it's cheap. Like there's a lot of cheap shots out in the summer ball, and guys are just competing so hard that it kind of gets ugly out there at times. And it's a great game. The summer ball and playing out west was awesome. I think the NLL is a bit faster version of the box lacrosse game. It's up and down. The transition game is so huge for every team, and I would say the speed of the game is the biggest difference between the two right now.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. I hadn't really considered that myself, but thinking on your answer, that's probably dead on. Dave, why don't we get back to some of the games real quick? Edmonton continuing their amazing undefeated run. They dominated a team that I thought really highly of coming into the season. They beat the Minnesota Swarm 14-9 at home. Any thoughts on that game? Did you catch that?
Yeah, I caught bits and pieces of it, and this was a game that
Yeah,
I actually, on my NLL radio show, I had actually picked Minnesota to upset and defeat Edmonton in this one, purely for the fact that Edmonton's goal output had steadily decreased as the season's gone along. They started off hot with getting a big like 17, 15, 14, and then they had gone down to 9, 8 against Philadelphia, and Mark Matthews had gotten shut out in that game, and so little by little the offense was struggling to get the ball into the net, and I thought Minnesota, while they're not having a great season, I thought they were starting to get some of their swagger back. Edmonton shut the door on that very, very quickly. 14-9. It was not that close. And only the third team in NLL history to do it. The first one not named the Buffalo Bandits to do it. They certainly have made a believer not only out of me, but a lot of other people here midway through the season. They are very impressive.
Yeah, no signs of slowing down either. Last time I checked on the statistics, interestingly, I think they were leading the league in goals against average, but also I know you talked about them slowing down on offense, but last time I looked at the stats about 2 weeks ago, I think them and Philly were kind of going back and forth as far as who was scoring the most goals a game at around 12.5, 13 goals a game, something like that, but obviously that's dipped since then.
Yeah, the offense has dipped just slightly, but they're still in the upper echelon. And the big, you mentioned the goals against. Aaron Bold's already a great goaltender, but he's got an elite defense in front of him. Not only just Philly, but most of the teams that they play, he's got the easiest job right now in the NLL because the shots he has, he's got a great line of sight where he can just make the initial stop and save, and that's it. A lot of the shots just don't get through to him, and you got to credit the guys who are out there in front of him doing it, making it very easy for him.
Yeah, no question. Speaking of defenses, two teams that have historically been known for their defense to an extent kind of round out our recap of last week. Even though this game by no means was necessarily indicative of defense, we saw a little bit of an offensive explosion in the second half. Let's talk about Rochester 17, Toronto 9. Like I said, both teams known for their defense. We'll bring the man in. Nick Rose, what happened in the game? I really saw Toronto coming out hot. Colin Doyle scored a bunch of goals. You guys look to be firing on all cylinders. What did Rochester do to confound what's been a great defense so far this year for you guys?
Yeah, we started the game pretty well, and for most of the first half, I think we felt pretty good with how the game was going. We let the game get away from us a little bit in the last 5 or 6 minutes of the second quarter, where I think they had 4 or 5 goals or whatever, and it's just that easy in this league to let a game get away from you. We kind of felt going into halftime we should have had a lead, and we kind of let them off the hook, and then coming out in the second half they just kind of continued to pour it on, and they just kind of stick with what they do, whether things are going good or bad, and it kind of seems to even itself out for them. So then that's a sign of a championship team. So we got to find a way to get over that hump soon. But we felt pretty good in the first half, and we felt we let that one get away from us pretty quickly.
Sure. And Dave, what did you think about Rochester's offensive explosion? Last week I was talking about how great their defense has been. We kind of been waiting for the offense to come around. Do you think that this is a sign of things to come for them, or a little bit of an aberration?
I think it's a sign of what could come. You know, it's funny. I was watching, going back and forth between two games because Philly and Buffalo was going on at the same time, and I actually tuned out right at the point where Toronto scored 2 goals in 3 seconds to tie that NLL record. So it was 8-5, and I said, all right, this is kind of going the way I thought because I picked Toronto, and then I looked again about 20 minutes later, and I saw what was happening, and did a double take. But Rochester is one of those teams that they've got the capability to put this type of points up, but they rely very heavily on their defense, and they kind of, I sometimes like to say they lull teams asleep, and maybe that's not the right terminology, but it seems like Rochester always looks like they're ready to do just enough to win the game. Like they don't blow people out. They know if they've got a lead, they know what they need to do to hold the lead. If they need goals, they know how to put goals in rapid succession, but it's always like Rochester knows what they need to do to win the game, and they do just that. That's what, and like Nick said, that's what makes a championship team. They know they don't have to put 15, 20 points up, 20 goals up in a night. Some nights they know they can do away with 9 or 10 and let Matt Vince and the defense take care of the rest. And then against a great team like Toronto, who's been red hot at home this year, they needed that kind of output, and they put it on them in the second half.
Yeah, that's really great insight. And let's not belabor, let's not dwell on what's been a tough loss and another otherwise awesome season for the Rock this year. Let's get to some of our viewer questions. We've got a ton of people checking in at hashtag NLL Live, a bunch of people commenting on the YouTube feed. Reminder that you can always get questions into us with hashtag NLL Live in the YouTube field here, and also at Facebook with the Lacrosse Network. We got Jim Elsey checking in. He wants to know, when your playing days are over, Nick, is GM for the Rock where you will end up? You got any player personnel experience?
Not really yet. I'm actually kind of going through the start of that process of getting into that side of the game as well. I'm currently serving as assistant GM with the Orangeville Junior A Northman, and trying to learn as much as I possibly can about basically picking players and that kind of stuff. And when my playing days are over, I'd love to stay in the game any way possible, and coaching and management is definitely a route I'm looking to go. So thanks for that question, Jim.
Now, I do want to get to some more viewer questions, but you did touch on something interesting that I wanted to ask you about. Being in the States, we don't really have a good enough understanding of how the Canadian junior circuit works, and I was reading up on you, and I saw that you made a point of actually playing Junior B as opposed to Junior A to get some experience. And I know that you guys have drafts up there, even though it's an amateur sport. I was reading about how you were drafted by the Brooklyn Redmen in MSL in Major Series Lacrosse, but somehow your rights are transferred to Coquitlam out in the WLA. For us in the States and thinking about youth lacrosse, we don't necessarily think about a general manager, right, for that type of thing. Talk about how that plays in and kind of explain that system a little bit, because I think you got some unique insight.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, Ontario lacrosse is something special. If you were to sit down someone like yourself and try to explain everything that goes on in the OLA, your head might explode. But it's an awesome game. As far as junior goes, it's kind of similar to like an OHL or whatever. I think there's 11 teams maybe in Junior A in Ontario, and most kids are homegrown. Like in Orangeville, we have a lot of homegrown kids, but sometimes you got to kind of make trades and draft kids. Like we end up getting Adam Jones for when I played in Junior A, and he's from Owen Sound. We got Damon Edwards, Stephen Keogh, like trade deadline guys. So, and they're both from Toronto. So it's a lot similar to the OHL where it's kind of hometown pride, but sometimes you got to go get some outsiders to make a run at a championship. As far as like dealing with GMs and stuff, it's a good buffer between kind of between a player and a coach and stuff, and it's just a different dynamic of kind of figuring things out with your team and player personnel. I think a GM's job is to kind of take a lot of the pressure off a coach and kind of let him just worry about coaching and not all the other stuff. So
Right. No, that makes sense. Let me follow up what was a hard question with a little bit of a softball. We got Ryan Sloan, seems to be one of your coworkers, checking in. He wants to know who's your favorite coworker at the track.
He might be around the corner listening to this right now. He probably wants me to say him. I mean, I love working with him. He's a guy and a beauty, but I gotta go with my man Patty Campbell. He also works here full time with computer stuff. He's a techie. He does all our websites and helps out at the track as well with anything that kind of needs to be done. So I'm involved with him with the Rock. He's our goalie coach, and I used to play with them as well. So I gotta go with my man Patty.
Nice. Because I forget who checked in with this question, but I'll hit you with another softball before we get to the obligatory gear. We got a bunch of gearheads checking in, wanted to ask you some questions. But somebody asked, who's your favorite Toronto Rock cheerleader? Which I think is interesting that we finally, after 9 weeks, transitioned to the famous ladies of the NLL.
Oh man, I'm gonna get in trouble for this. I think
this is a dangerous one. And you know who it was? It was Derek Weber. Derek Weber, 34.
Oh man.
Ask you who your favorite cheerleader is.
I'm not. I'm gonna stay away from this and just say all of them. I'm not getting myself into that kind of trouble.
Okay, nice. Now, do you guys interact with them? I'm sure at the post game, they come around a lot. Is there a warm and fuzzy feeling between the groups, or is it adversarial?
Yeah, we're around them quite a bit for appearances and clinics and that kind of stuff. And yeah, after games, they're around as well. It's nice to interact with them and the fans and all that. So we see a lot of each other for sure.
Nice. And last one for me before I turn it over to my man Dave, who I'm sure has got some questions for Nick. Maurice Moose Yellow is checking in. What a Twitter handle for you. Moose Juice Lax is the Twitter name. He asked, how do you feel about the difference between the small field goalie heads that I guess you guys are required to use in the NLL versus a woody wall type head that you probably use in the summer league? And following up with that, do you have your stick handy to show us when you're done answering the question?
Yeah, I got my gamer here beside me, but it is tough transitioning to both. Like I almost find it tougher to go back to the woody after using the little stick. It's just such a different feeling, and you got to kind of have your arm up a bit higher, and you can take a wider stance and all that kind of stuff. So I have a bit more trouble transitioning back to the wooden stick, but I obviously prefer the woody because it's bigger and it's traditional. It's what they used to use back in the day and the glory days of lacrosse, and I think there's always going to be a place for wooden lacrosse sticks in our game as long as they keep making them. So I prefer the woodies over the plastic, but that's just a goalie's biased opinion with smaller gear. So.
Sure. Yeah, I guess I didn't think about that, but obviously it changes your stance. For the viewers out there that don't know, he's talking about the big wooden goalie sticks. They're freaking humongous. I mean, the thing covers the whole bottom of the net. It's almost an unfair advantage compared to this guy that we got right here.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about that. I'm assuming that's an Under Armour offering. We got some nice custom rock colors on there. Anything special you do with the stringing? Do you string your own sticks?
I usually do string my own sticks, but I got Mark Mesh to do this one. I've gotten used to their mesh, so I've stuck with them, and they strung me up a pretty good sized pocket here, and basically how I've always liked it and come accustomed to. So it's nothing too special, just blue and red for the Rock, and we do got to use these new Under Armour heads, which aren't too bad. I think a lot of the boys around the NLL had a bit of a concern because we were able to use those the gate webs in past years, which had a bit more plastic around the edges, which is obviously good. Yeah, obviously good for stopping the ball. So, but I don't think too many boys have had any issue switching over. It's not that big of a difference. So.
Sorry to bogart the time here, Dave. I'll kick it to you in 1 second. But a quick question about the sticks. Tell us a little bit about that tape job. You got any superstitions about the stick? I know a lot of guys sleep with them and do crazy stuff. Anything special for you?
No, I leave this one here at the track, right beside my gear. Nothing too special. Try to treat it right. You don't want too much dirt and snow and that kind of stuff on it. But as far as the tape job goes, in the NLL we're allowed to have 2 inches of like a thick buildup or whatever of a paddle.
A guide for your hand, right? Yeah.
Yeah. So I try to utilize all that width with the big tape job because it is an advantage for stopping balls, and we're allowed to go to 2 inches, and until that changes, I'm going to stick with that. So.
All right, cool. We'll get back to the viewer questions here in just a second for Nick. I actually had one for you, Nick. When you joined Toronto, there was a really good story out on ILN Door right around that same time that told fans how you came to start wearing the number 66. If you wouldn't mind just giving the fans a little bit of insight on how you came to choose that number.
Yeah, that was a number number 6 was a number my dad wore when he played lacrosse. And growing up, number 6 was never a goalie jersey, so we would always have. Actually, one of my best buds would wear number 6 growing up, so I just kind of decided to put them together, and one 6 for me and 1 6 for him, and I just kind of rolled with it. I would have to kind of take a number 30 and go get a custom 66 thrown on it, but it kind of seemed like a good rallying point for when I'm playing. So. Yeah.
No, absolutely. I love the story behind that. That's why I wanted the fans to know that. That's great. All right, everybody, keep the questions coming in. We have the guy 1545. Here's an interesting question asking, will you play outdoor lacrosse? I don't know, Nick. Do you even have I know your background as far as like you're playing in the WLA. You've got the NLL. Do you have any experience playing in the outdoor game at all? Is that something you'd consider?
Yeah, I played field lacrosse up until the end of under 19. After that, I kind of took box very seriously, so I stopped playing field lacrosse. But I was actually an attackman in field, and our PR guy here with the Toronto Rock, Mike Hancock, he was the GM in Halton Hills, and I played with him my last year under 19. And you could ask him about it, but pretty sure I set the Halton Hills record for goals in a season, so no big deal.
Flashing the offensive stick. I like that. Also, Elijah Casellas chiming back in again. He said, Nick, since you've auctioned your stick, is there anything else you'll be auctioning off? I mean, what else could you possibly want? I mean, you've got that hat you got there is pretty nice. I don't know. You want to start the bidding now? Or are you looking to auction anything else off?
Nice.
Yeah. We, me and a few other players this year for Movember did a lot of auctioning of rock gear to raise money for Movember, and if it's for a great cause, I'm not afraid to auction any of my gear off. I'll probably do sticks again next Movember, and I've thought about auctioning off my helmet, but with the paint job I have on it, I think it might be a bit too special to auction off. I think I got to keep it, but I'm not afraid to sell off old gear when the time's right and there's a good cause. So.
And for the right price, everybody.
Yeah.
Get the cash out. All right, don't be cheap.
Yeah.
Especially when it comes to charity. It looks like you may still be sporting that mustache over there.
Yeah. No, I got a bit of a goatee. I can't grow the sides, so I got to shave before this weekend because after last weekend you got to switch things up. So.
Switch it up. Nice. And good to hear that you're involved in Movember. I saw that you guys raised a bunch of money. Again, everybody, thanks for checking in. We got Matt Cree. He's got an interesting question for you. He wants to know, and you're probably a little young to start considering this, so Matt, this might be a little premature, but he wants to know, how long will you continue to play in the NLL, or rather hope to play? I'm assuming you hope to play for a really long time, but any thoughts on that?
I mean, you nailed it on the head there.
Yeah.
I want to play as long as I can. I've always been around the game. It's my whole life's revolves around lacrosse. So I'm gonna try to play as long as I can, as long as I stay healthy and all that. I'd like to kind of have Whipper's kind of career output. Well, not output, but like his lifespan.
Output's pretty good. Got a couple championships there.
Well, yeah, I'd like that output, but he's the greatest of all time, so that's going to be tough. But I think he stopped playing when he was 38 or whatever, so as close to 40 as possible. And if I'm lucky to keep playing after that, I will. So.
Sure, and for those that you don't know, Whipper, who he's referring to, is famously Bob Watson, the former legendary goalie for the Toronto Rock, and you got some good idols there as far as longevity playing with you now in Colin Doyle and Josh Sanderson, two guys that are pretty high up on the all-time scoring list that have had some long accomplished careers themselves. I'm sure they're imparting some good advice to you. We got a couple more questions coming for you. Daniel Goldsboro wants to know, how would you describe your style as a goaltender? I read something talking about how you're a little more prone to coming out as opposed to staying on your line. Talk about that and what it means to have a style as a box lacrosse goalie.
Yeah, I mean, I think I've always been described as a blocker because I'm a bigger guy, obviously, but you got to improvise in it, especially in the NLL, and there's no save that I don't like to make. So if I have to kind of get out and challenge, I will. And that's what I try to do. Is we try to limit shots to the outside, and I just got to get out on them and make the save. But like I said, in the NLL, there's so many great shooters and playmakers that you got to improvise on the go and kind of make those, I guess, highlight reel saves, for lack of a better word. And you got to switch up your style against who you're playing. You got to recognize what shooters do well, and you got to match that. So I've always been described as a blocker and an angles goalie, but I'd like to think I do a little bit of everything okay.
Yeah, and from what I understand, your style is actually part of what brought you to Toronto. Apparently, when Troy Cordingley was the coach, they played a little bit more of an aggressive pressing style that lends itself to teams being forced into long-range outside shots that may have been causing some problems for your predecessor, and I guess they knew that you could step in and handle that. So great that was your entree into the league. We got Scott Lugwood checking in again, and thanks again for your repeat questions, Elijah and Scott. He's got an interesting one. We kind of know that all goalies, regardless of sports, kind of have a little bit of a screw loose. I don't know what your experience is with other sports like soccer or hockey, maybe. Which goalies have to be the craziest? For me, I'm thinking box lacrosse.
Oh man, obviously I'm biased. Not many people are willing to take shots going 100 miles per hour. Little Indian rubber ball. They can hurt a lot. I throw hockey goalies into the same mix. I mean, a puck hurts just as much as a ball. Other than that, I think those are the two sports where taking a shot, you're going to get a lot of bruises. So you can pick either box lacrosse or field as well. You're getting lots of
less padding.
Yeah, exactly. Like I know I couldn't be a field goalie because you don't get as much equipment, and even if you're playing well, it seems like they let in a lot of goals, and I don't know if I could have that mindset where people are telling me I'm playing well, but I'm still letting in all these goals. So probably the three of those are the toughest, I think.
Sure, and you touched on some mental toughness. As a goalie, oftentimes it's not necessarily your physical prowess, right? You don't necessarily have to be the fastest guy in the field. You don't have to be the strongest guy in the field. Obviously, athleticism is still important. You want to be able to get side to side, but clearly mental toughness, seems to be an attribute. Is there anything that you do to practice that or hone that, or is that just something that you've been blessed with?
I don't do too much special.
You don't have to be modest.
Yeah, no, I don't do anything to get my mind right other than just I try to prepare as well as I can for every game, as far as watching video and reading coaches' notes and that kind of stuff. But I've always kind of been like calm goalie, and I try to play like that and not kind of lose my head like some goalies I've seen that kind of go a little crazy out there. But no, I try to stay calm out there and kind of focus on what's going to happen next. So.
Last two viewer comments here, and then we'll get to our predictions for next week. Prodigy Launch is checking in. They want to know what your favorite ice cream flavor is.
Ice cream flavor. Oh, I mean, I think you got to go to the well and just go chocolate. No, yeah, I don't have any. Yeah, I'm just gonna go chocolate. Maybe a chocolate vanilla swirl will do the trick, but either sure. Or.
Okay, and this looks like an opportunity for you. I think you should certainly reach out to the guys. Greg from East Coast Dies, a former guest on the Lacrosse show, is checking in. He says, Nick, let me know if you need some East Coast Dies mesh. So you might have an opportunity there. Certainly hit those guys up. Alexis Tajena wants to know if there are any cities that you dislike visiting in the NLL.
No, not that I dislike visiting, because it means you have an opportunity to play a great sport no matter where it is. But if I had to name one, I'd say Buffalo, probably, because they got they pack their house and they have a lot of loud fans that are booing you at every whistle. So I'd probably say Buffalo, but at the same time, you like playing in a rink that's pretty well fully packed, and it's good for a game and good for the atmosphere of a game. So I would say I hate going anywhere, but I'd have to go Buffalo if I have to answer that.
Sure. Chirp City out there, that's for sure. And last one before we get into the comments. This is in the spirit of my boy Connor Wilson, who always wants to know about people's origins and getting some tips from the pros to try to help the kids out there. I saw that you started playing lacrosse at age 3, which is obviously pretty young. I mean, way before I ever started with the sport. And goalie is a really interesting position that, a lot of times gets undercoached. There's not a lot of people helping out the goalies of the world out there. Are there any specific drills or tips or anything that helped you in your development? Anything that you can pass on to the kids?
Oh man, I think anything with footwork going side to side is only going to help. That's those kind of drills, like even going from boards to boards, just shuffling or whatever. That's all stuff that's going to be a positive attribute going forward. So I would just say stuff that helps your footwork. So.
Good answer. Okay. We have a late entry here from my producers. They want to know what Kai Delos Santos wants to know. What is your favorite chip?
Favorite chip?
Yeah.
I guess I'd go Ruffles. Just plain Ruffles.
That's fine. That's a good answer. Oh, we got to get to this one. Yeah, sound the alarm is right. Apologies for the noise, everybody. My apartment building has the craziest fire alarm ever, which is going off and talking to me right now. Boston Boxlax, presumably some former Blazer friends of yours, they want to know, what's your favorite story from the Blazers den? Anything that you're allowed to offer up for the folks out there.
Oh, man, there's a lot of good ones, but I got to go with...
You can say pass.
Well, our first year, the Blazer Den, we had 5 guys, and it was just a really big house, and kind of the party house. And I remember on St. Paddy's Day there, myself, Paul Dawson, and Matt Lyons, before going to the St. Paddy's Day parade in Boston, we made a fort in our living room after a few drinks, mind you, and I remember Paul. I remember Paulie Dawson. We had a Guitar Hero or a rock band set up too, and our equipment trainer walked in as Paul Dawson was about to break the guitar over Matt Lyons' back. So our trainer didn't look at us the same after that. So I'd probably have to go that. So.
No, I'm sure. I went to college up in Boston, so I know how those St. Patrick's Days can be, man. That's for
Yeah.
sure. Uh, and again, apologies to everybody out there for the fire alarm. I guess we'll call this the goal noise. Hopefully, Nick doesn't hear too much of that coming up this weekend, which is a great segue to talk about the games that are coming up. We got a great slate of action scheduled for Saturday, the 22nd. We got Minnesota is coming to Toronto to play you guys. What are your thoughts on that game, Nick?
I think it's two teams that are pretty desperate right now. I mean, we're coming off a pretty brutal loss, and they've been skidding a bit. So I think it's a good opportunity for both teams to get back on track. And obviously, I'm hoping that we come out with the kind of effort we expect to and try and get those 2 points. But we know it's not going to be easy. They're a team that laid one on us last year in the playoffs. So we got to be ready, and we had a good preparation week with practice and video, so I know we'll be ready, and they'll be ready, so it'll be a good game, but we expect to have a good effort for sure.
Dave, what do you think about these two conference rivals going at it?
Yeah, I agree. I actually agree with Nick's analysis 100%. I think these are two teams that are in desperate need of a win. Minnesota is obviously trying to salvage something out of their season here and get back into it in the second half. Toronto, with the exception of last week, has been dominant at home. I like Toronto in this one. Perhaps I'm just rooting for Toronto to beat them up a little bit so Minnesota will be nice and tired. When they come to Philadelphia the next day, maybe that's just me. But, no, in all honesty, I like this game for Toronto, and if they come out and they do what they normally do, I think they can handle them pretty easily.
Yeah, I agree with the both of you. I think this is Toronto's game to lose, fortunately or unfortunately. And Dave, you're meant for this job, man. Can't wait to see you on NLL halftime. But you give us another great segue. Talking about the next day, we got Minnesota is traveling down to play your Philly Wings. I'm sure you're excited to have the call at the Wells Fargo Center. Are you going to go homer on me, or you like the Swarm in that one?
For the record, I don't always pick Philadelphia. In fact, my picks this year have been the kiss of death on my NLL radio show. I've got like the worst batting average. For instance, I picked Buffalo to win the home of the season opener against Philadelphia, and we all saw how that went. But in this game, Philadelphia, the last time Minnesota came to town, there was a disputed goal in the fourth quarter where Shane McIntosh actually checked Evan Kirk's stick, knocked the ball out, and that gave Minnesota the lead and eventually the win. And I know, even though Philadelphia went up to Minnesota the next day and creamed them up at the Excel Center, I know just from talking to some of the guys, I know that's sitting in the back of their mind. They want to get that win in front of the fans. And, especially with these teams at the bottom of the Eastern Division, to have that tiebreaker, going towards the second half of the season, I think that's very important. And I don't think Philadelphia is going to come out flat like they did against Buffalo. I like Philly in this one.
Yeah, these are two teams that are somewhat similar to me stylistically. They're both a young team. Well, Philly has a little bit more of an experience, longer in the tooth on offense, which is certainly a problem for Minnesota right now. But they have young defenses that like to push and get up the floor. I got an interesting question for you, Dave. And we got a goalie on the show. Couldn't have a more intriguing situation than once again the return matchup for Evan Kirk against his former team. What do you think about that? Do we have any insight into who's going to be in net between him and Mr. Miller? And then I guess we'll bring Nick in after that to talk about Minnesota's kind of flip-flopping goalie situation this year. We'll start with you, Dave.
Yeah, we were all expecting from the get-go, Kirk versus Carlson. It's, there can be only one, and that lasted for 3 minutes in the first game. But then Zach Higgins, give him credit, he came out and stoned Philadelphia. And then again the next day, Philadelphia did it to him again, and they flip-flopped. And now Philadelphia is the one where Kirk, I think it wasn't his best performance. I think he'd be the first one to say there were a couple, especially in the fourth quarter, that got away from him. I would still expect Evan to get the start. However, I think if for some reason this starts to go awry, I would expect the hook to Brandon Miller. I think obviously, when they went up to Toronto, Brandon signs the contract, and the next day he's got the uniform on and coming in the second half. That's a tough situation for any goaltender in any situation. But now he's got the game gear on a little bit more. He's a little more worn in, and and that's what made Evan and Brandon so good up at Six Nations. When one of them had an off night, the other one can jump right in, bingo, pick it right back up, and that helped really stabilize, their goalie rotation. And I know Philadelphia is looking for the same as well. I still think Evan will get the start, but I wouldn't be surprised if it starts going the wrong way to see a pull.
Sure, good insight. And Nick, I don't want to put you in a tough spot talking about another team's goaltending core, but what do you think about what Minnesota's got going on? They traded away Evan Kirk, and now it looks like they're having a little bit of dysfunction over there. Talk about what it's like to play in a goaltending core, and talk about Minnesota if you want to.
Yeah, I think that's just the nature of our league, is that teams go on runs, and sometimes you got to kind of switch things up over the course of a game just to kind of wake up your team. Like I got pulled last weekend. I think that's kind of the message Coach John Lovell was trying to send was like it's time to wake up here. But I think like I've grown up playing against my whole life against Carlson. I've played with Kirky as well my whole life. I think they're both great goalies, and they can take a team far. And I think their coaches just need to kind of ride them and give them that opportunity to. And I know in Philly is a bit different situation because Brandon Miller is a vet and one of the best in the game. So I see Philly going Kirky this weekend just because he will have a bit of a chip on his shoulder. Especially facing his old team. So they're both great goalies, and I expect them to keep playing well. And a goalie is your team's backbone. So I think Minnesota and Philadelphia are both pretty well off.
Yeah, and Nick, just to get a little bit more explanation into something you just said, when a goaltender gets pulled in the NLL, is there that, I don't want to say stigma, but is there more of a hidden message? And for instance, when in the NHL, when a goaltender gets pulled, it's obviously because he's let in, multiple goals in a row, or the game's getting out of hand, and now you're just trying to get the backup in there to get some work. But in a game like the NLL, where runs happen, it's not unexpected to see 4, 5, 6, something like that happen in a game. How do you take it as a goaltender? Is it just what's happening in the game, or is there something more behind it?
I think it's more of a situation of what's happening in the game. This past Saturday, when I got pulled, the game wasn't completely out of hand then, so I made a point to keep my helmet and gloves on in case I had to go back in because, like you said, teams can get 4 or 5 within a couple minutes. So I think mainly in NLL, it's when you switch goaltenders, it's more just to wake up your bench and kind of say, well, it's time to play now here. And if things keep going how they've been going and you're not getting saves like we did on Saturday, then it's just time to kind of let the starters stay on the bench and ride out the backup. And like we had Wojciech go in, make a lot of good saves for us. I think he only let in 3 goals over quarter and a half or whatever, so he gave us a shot to get back in the game, but we just didn't have that kind of swagger going that night. So I don't know if it's a personal message or not. I know from my experience with our coaches that it was just more of a situation to kind of spark us a bit.
Yeah, great insight from an NLL goalie, and I got to agree with you, Nick. Having been a former hockey goalie, to me in hockey, when the goalie gets pulled, he ain't coming back in, and I don't think he can even come back in by rule. Whereas in the NLL, I think it's more to give the guy a breather, maybe give the team a spark, shake his head loose a little bit, get the cobwebs out. So yeah, I think it's a little bit of a different process, but always interesting to see when that happens. Let's get back to our last preview of the week. We got Rochester against Calgary. Interesting one for Rochester. They're traveling halfway around the world seemingly and going out to the Dome to play the hot Roughnecks. Mr. Walls, what do you think about arguably the most interesting game of the weekend?
Yeah, this is definitely the game of the weekend, and I always love Calgary in the Dome, and now seemingly since his appearance on NLL Live, Curtis Dixon has been picking it back up as far as it's all due to you. There you go, buddy. You picked him right back up. Motivational speaker, Mark Powers. There you are, and Free
That's
bobblehead
right.
comes with it too. But no, yeah. But in all seriousness, no, I love Calgary at home. I always, especially coming off the big game though against Rochester, when again they put 17 on the board. The problem is, I think for Rochester, they're going to have to put up that kind of goal output to compete, because Calgary, especially at home this season, has put up lots of big goal nights. I see this one being pretty close, but a high scoring game. But I think Calgary's going to edge them out in this one, maybe only by one.
Okay. And hey, Nick, just to touch on what Dave was saying, no pressure, bud, but I think everybody that's come on the show has had a pretty big week after they've been on and gotten the W. So I'm just saying, it's all on you. Nick, question for you about Calgary. They actually have one of your other mentors, Mike Poulin, in goal for them. Admittedly, they've had some defensive struggles this year, but Poulin's been a guy that I've really liked his play. I think he's been a steadying rock for them. What do you think about him specifically, and then what do you think about the outcome for this game?
Yeah, I mean, Cooley, I'm very familiar with. I mean, he was a junior A goalie in Orangeville when I kind of decided to stay in junior B and play some games, because the junior A's had Cooley, who was obviously one of the best goalies in junior A. He's a great teammate. He's a great goalie, and he's going to give you a chance to win every night, and especially with that group there. I mean, I was there before getting traded here to Toronto. They have a great locker room and a lot of leaders, and I think with a group like that, especially a team that puts the ball in the net like they do, I think Cooley's the right guy for the job there, and he'll give them a shot every night. So in this game, oh man, that's a tough matchup. It's going to be a great game. I don't even know who to choose here, but I think I'm going to go Calgary, because they are at home, and they kind of seem to have a bit more of a step and a jump at home and play with a bit more jam. So I'll go Calgary, but Rochester definitely will be in it till the end. So yeah.
Yeah, agreed. Great usage of the term jam there. Coach would be proud. But, I hate to be lame, but I agree with these two guys. I kind of like Calgary in this game. I like them at home. I think Rochester's, might struggle with the travel a little bit. I think it'll probably be a little lower scoring game than Calgary's used to. Conversely, I think it might be a little higher scoring than Rochester's seemingly been used to this year. It'll be interesting to see who really wins the strength battle between Calgary's offense and, their studs like, Curtis Dixon and the like, versus Rochester's defense with Matt Vince and the boys that have seemingly been playing awesome. Before we go, we got some great questions in at the end from one of your former Orangeman buddies, or, from Northville, and the back-to-back Mintos that you guys won. Andrew Suter, Suits20, is checking in. Yeah, he seems to like the show, or at least like to chirp the guys that are on the show each week. He wants to know, who's your best friend?
Oh, wow. Just throwing a haymaker question like that out there, eh, Suits?
He seems to stir the pot, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I would throw him in there. He's one of my best buds for sure. We grew up playing together from the same town. Yeah, I'd say Suits, or even Glennie Bryan plays at Buffalo. I got a lot of good buddies that aren't lacrosse guys, but I'll throw Suter and Glennie Bryan in there for sure.
Yeah. So I hate to kind of belabor this, but we didn't get enough time to talk about it. That Orangeville program is really legendary. You've had a ton of success with them. Goaltender of the Year, Minto Cups, Rookie of the Year. Talk about what it is that makes that program so special, and why you got so many NLL All-Stars with you that came up through there.
Yeah, I mean, it starts and ends with our minor program. We got a lot of kids signing up for lacrosse, and it has a lot to do with players giving back. Like the first thing they tell us when we graduate at our banquet at the end of the year, they say, make sure you give back if you have the time, like to help coach or whatever. And I've been away the last 4 summers out west, so I haven't been able to give back as much as I can. But that's the reason why I've got involved this year with Orangeville, just because it's what we're supposed to do, what we're told to do, and Anytime you're kind of helping grow the game, and especially in your hometown, you got to take that opportunity. So I think I think we have a great program just because of our minor system and great lacrosse players giving back to the little kids. So.
Nice. We got a light week of NLL action coming up. We got Colorado, Edmonton, Vancouver, and Buffalo all on the bye, so we'll only have a couple games to discuss next week. I'd really like to thank my guests, Nick Rose, Dave Walls. Nick, you got any shout-outs for the folks at home? Any sponsors? Anybody you need to shout out? Let them know that you're thinking of them.
No, I don't think so. Actually, I'll give a shout out to my boss, our team owner, Jamie Dalwick. He might not even know I'm doing this right now, but obviously being at the track and kind of being able to help grow the game in this situation, I'll give a shout out to him.
No doubt. In the house that Dalwick built, right? There you go.
The Dalwick Dome.
The Dalwick Dome. I like it.
That.
Official. Hashtag that. There you go, man. Nice. And here he is, the rising star of NLL broadcasting. This man holds down the Philly games on himself. Arguably, yeah, looking at you, Dave Walls, one of my favorite announcers. I love listening to him. He's got some great insight, and I'm really excited to actually pay attention at halftime instead of fast-forwarding like I normally do to catch him on the NLL halftime show. That seems like it's up to a great start. Dave Walls, thanks for coming on tonight. Anybody that you'd like to shout out?
Well, I'd like to thank my wife because she keeps checking in, going, "Are you done yet?" And so I want to say thank you to her because I know she'll end up watching this later. And no, just thanks again to Nick for showing up. Thanks to everyone at TLN for having me tonight, and to all you Philly Wings out there. Hang strong. Got a second half of the season, and make sure you watch NL halftime. We just do a nice couple-minute recap of where all the teams are standing and maybe some stats about some of the league leaders that you didn't know. It's a good way to spend the half.
Nice. Be sure you catch Dave on that program. You can always catch us here on the Lacrosse Network. Reminder to check the Lacrosse Network, TLN, for all the games when they happen live over the weekend. You can also catch the replays during the week. And they've also got the top 10, which just seems to be getting better and better. We didn't touch on that this week, but every time I check that out, that seems to be awesome stuff. We had a really hot show tonight. First time we had a goalie on, and it was so hot that they had to set the alarm off on us. I couldn't resist. It's too easy. But thanks again to the awesome guests we had on. Hopefully we get you guys on later on this year. And best of luck to you, Nick Rose, with the rest of the season. That's it for NLL Live for Week 9. Hope to see you guys next week. Thanks for checking in.